Yep, my name is Caleb and I'm with Refugia Gardens, which is a small-scale regenerative or beyond organic farm out on the east side of the peaks in the Doney Park Timberline area. We're a small-scale cooperative farm. We grow a bunch of different varieties of vegetables and things for the Flagstaff Community Market, as well as we've also had in the past a CSA, a Community Supported Agriculture Program. Yeah, you can find us at the Flagstaff Community Market on Sundays, and you can check out more info about us online at refugiagardens.org. So this is our main growing area. So we have 13 100-foot long by 2.5-foot wide beds. Each one of these guys is on this north side, and then 13 on this south side. So we do a lot. The vast majority of our production is grown just not in hoop houses. But we do also use low tunnels, which are kind of like mini hoop houses with plastic or with frost cloth on them.
Okay, and then when about do you usually take those off? Like,
yeah,
you're not concerned that maybe you might get nipped?
Usually, we just pulled the cloth out from the rows completely. I want to say late June, early July.
Okay, that's fair,
yeah, because we had that, that freeze, that pretty deep freeze in late May, early June, and so we kept everything on for sure until about that time, just to make sure. But we take things, the cloth we usually take on and off. We roll it off the hoops and then roll it back on, just to help the plants not overheat, basically, when it is hot and sunny in early June, but it can still be 32 or below in the evening or in the nighttime. So and then we also use shade cloth on those guys as well, to cover some of the plants, just to help shade some of the cool weather crops, to get through that extreme
really
heat
hot
in June and early July. So
do you guys have to do anything? I know the wind out here is notorious, so what do you do? I mean, is that part of what you do is using the row covers for wind protection as well, but is there anything else that you kind of do when it gets real bad in the spring?
There's only so much you can.
Right, that's the situation.
So ideally, we would have windbreak plantings, and some of the rest of the property allows for a little bit of a windbreak. These hoop houses also allow for some of the crops on basically the eastern or the northeastern side to be broken from the wind, because it mostly comes here. It mostly comes from the southwest to northeast. So there's only so much you can do, but we use lots of sandbags to keep our row cover on.
I bet.
So sometimes we'll try to orient our plants so that we have things like these beans on this kind of far west side, which are going to grow quite a bit taller, and so they'll be able to provide a little bit of a windbreak for the fall wind, for the rest of the plants, at least immediately next to them. So we just try to do structure our crop planning around that a little bit too, because it is definitely very windy out here, but you have to accept some of it. So so we have a bunch of squash, we have a bunch of greens, we have some beans and peas over on the side. Our squash obviously is going quite crazily.
Your squash looks great.
Nick
nice.
harvested about 75 pounds just today. So
nice. Yeah, I can see there's still some squash hanging out in there. That's real beautiful. It'll be ready in the next couple days. Squash blossoms.
And then here you can also see, actually I'll take you over here really briefly. So we have our irrigation system is both a combination of hand watering as well as, especially we use that heavily in the early part of the season when pipes are wont to freeze. So we do hand watering to also help establish some of our transplants as well as our direct seeded crops, to get an even spread of the water. And then we also have a drip irrigation system. So this guy basically, you have a filter device and everything that then splits off into 2 different timers. So these timers go to different zones.
Okay.
So the farm is split up into like 5 different zones, basically, where the water is able to, so basically like one zone will come, the pipe then is buried and then comes over here, and then it splits off, and then it ends. It covers around 5 or 6 beds.
Okay.
And each one of these guys, you have this drip tape stuff that is a low flow drip tape. So what happens is that you can actually see some of the hard water deposits.
Your water out there is a little hard.
Yeah. So yeah, we have Doney Park water. So that's primarily groundwater, pretty much all groundwater. So these have different, you can order them at like a different spacing, the emitters at different spacing, and basically it just drips the water right out of these emitters, and so that it can get really close to the plant roots. And it's really, really efficient because then you're not losing all the kind of top water that would otherwise evaporate where there aren't plants or where there are weeds.
Edible weeds.
Edible weeds.
Yeah.
I should be, we have purslane and some mallow here, and then we have some amaranth. We do love our weeds, but some of them we definitely like to pull because they will take over.
Yeah, no, I do the same thing. It's like you leave some of them. Once they start encroaching a little much, you gotta take some of them out.
Yeah. So this is kind of we can do a little, well actually, I can pop in here too.
Oh, beautiful tomatoes.
Yeah, so we have, unlock this guy. So we have a bunch of tomatoes in here. This actually, we went really hard on the tomatoes this year.
I see this.
This is a 100-foot hoop house, so it's 14 feet wide by 100 feet. It has a Gothic arch instead of the other one has just a circular Quonset arch. Basically that allows us to be a little bit taller in here, as well as to it sheds snow a lot better than a Quonset, and that's just we just want to basically height and a little extra space on the sides. So we get a full 4 rows in here, and we have a bunch of tomato plants. So we have 4 different varieties in here. We have an heirloom Cherokee purple. We have the black cherry. I think this one's the black cherry. We have the a yellow pear, and then Brad's atomic grape. And these are at different stages of growth because the starts did a little bit differently when we started them. So we use a lowering and leaning technique. So basically that's where you have the plants attached to these individual strings. And the individual strings, you might be able to see right here, have these little plastic clips. So you can also do them where you wrap around the plant as well.
Yeah, that's what I've always been.
Yeah, and it's great. It works really great. We actually found that with our wind out here though, we had actually last year in the other tunnel when we were growing tomatoes there, we had a bunch of plants actually rip out because these guys the nice thing about these guys is that they can move. The plant is still able to kind of wiggle around, but with these other ones they got really tight, the wind was pushing them and they just ripped the whole plant out because the wind was so bad. So that was a bummer. But anyway, so you can wrap them. You can also get these little clips which are pretty cheap, that kind of just give the plant a little bit extra space, and they're reusable, as is this string. So basically we have a kind of a trellising system down there, and then these guys, as the tomatoes grow up, when they reach this top part, what you can do is you can take them and you can lower them and lean them. So basically you give them extra space vertically so that they can keep growing, while they, and therefore keep producing, because these guys are growing about a foot a week. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so it's great. We have lots of flowers on. We have some little green tomatoes. They are not quite ripe yet, but these guys are doing really good. And we also do some interplantings too. We're experimenting this year with some greens on the sides. So once these guys are fully done, once the greens have been cut maybe another time, we'll probably just end up pulling them. So we have some baby-ish kale on either side of this guy. We have some lettuce, some mizuna on that guy, and then some more baby kale on this guy. And then some calendula, that reseeded itself happily.
Volunteers.
yeah,
I
and
appreciate that.
is also a great, companion plant for pests and things for, with tomatoes. So.
I guess on that, since we're on that, what do you guys use for your pest management strategies?
Yeah, so I think we deal with a lot of challenging things out here.
I bet, yeah.
as does everyone in Flagstaff, but because we're on the dry side of the mountain, we also have a lot of wind, and we have plenty of pocket gophers as well. So we learn to live with them to some degree, but we also think of ourselves as some of the additional kind of natural predators to them. So what we'll do is we'll just trap them as well, and they're just kind of standard gopher traps. And we will either compost them or feed them to the chickens. So they just to help kind of in some ways kind of keep the population in check. But they love our plants. So
I
what can
believe
we
that,
say?
yeah, kind of a trade-off. You feed them, they feed your chickens.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's part of the reciprocity.
It is.
So that's one thing that we definitely deal with here, because they'll chomp a whole plant root and then that plant is basically gone. So our kale and I'll actually show you, our kale and our chard is a little bit patchy and very weedy, but a little bit patchy because we've had so many gophers just chomp those guys down. So we'll just kind of do a little bit of trapping here and there, and then we also deal with flea beetles quite a bit. So they are, let me actually see. So they're the little guys that'll create this kind of damage. Let's see if we
I
can.
think I have another
here we go.
video. Yeah.
Yeah, little tiny guys that when you poke them, they'll jump.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, so they're something we also, with pests, you just have to kind of learn to live with them when you're doing organic-ish or like regenerative agriculture. But we also do try to use like a neem oil spray to try to discourage them from chomping on the plants, as well as diatomaceous earth. So that there's varying degrees of effectiveness, and once they're established, it's really hard to get them out. So those guys, thrips, we also deal with, and they also are really hard because both flea beetles and thrips don't really have any robust natural predators. So at least that we've experienced here. So we that's where we kind of use more heavily those kind of the diatomaceous earth and the neem oil methods, but with like aphids, we try to do as much as we can with ladybugs and cultivating habitat for ladybugs, and we've actually seen a huge growth in ladybugs here. So we've brought them occasionally. We probably bring in like new ones once every maybe like 2 or 3 times maybe during the growing season, especially in the early parts. Because they will munch away at those aphids, but then they've gotten really well established here. So really, part of it is just building the habitat for those ladybugs to thrive. So it's I think those are kind of the main kind of pests that we have to deal with. It's always a give and take process, and sometimes you just have to let go of things being lost.
I lost a whole group of turnips I started this spring because the flea beetles were all about the turnips.
Absolutely.
And it does seem like there are certain plants that they prefer to munch on that I've noticed. So like picking where you plant those.
Absolutely. So there's some really great intercrop plantings that you can do for any number of pests. We've tried stuff with gophers, and to some degree it's like if they're hungry enough, they will eat it. They were actually, we had a bunch of garlic in these that we pulled about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago in these 2 rows, and we actually lost a lot of garlic over the fall, the winter, and the spring because those gophers they were hungry, so they were eating the garlic, which
I've
Gophers
never
usually
heard,
don't.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah,
we
so-
had issues with them eating our onions last
Oh,
year, which
yeah.
really surprised me too.
I think, yeah.
And I don't think I've ever seen them eat potatoes either, and they were
Oh,
going
yeah.
after those
Oh,
also.
geez,
I think just
yeah.
because it was so dry.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That
there
is very
wasn't a
true.
lot of other stuff for them to eat other than what we were watering. I guess I would wonder, how frequently do you water? And since you have hard water, how deeply do you feel like it's necessary to water?
Yeah, so we, it's, it's totally dependent on the weather. If it's
Right.
hot and dry, we're watering, much more frequently and much more heavily than we would otherwise. These days, with the monsoon,
Yeah,
with
it's
the
been
great
lovely.
monsoon we've
Yeah.
had, we have had, it's been really nice. So we actually, during the monsoon season, if we get a good monsoon, we don't actually end up watering very much other than inside the tunnels
passes.
because
Yeah.
they don't get water otherwise. But outside of that, like in June when it's dry and hot, we oftentimes will water almost twice a day. So yeah, there's some like calculations that we have done because this is low flow drip. We're able to keep it on a little bit for longer so that it's able to percolate along a little bit
Right.
deeper. But we'll water like twice a day, so once in the morning and then once in like the mid-afternoon, just to kind of give the plants a little bit extra moisture to be able to make it through the heat early mid-afternoon. And then deeply we try to, again, it's kind of crop dependent, but we try to do, like for our greens and things, we'll do, once they get to a certain height, so these guys, this lettuce we actually just recently cut, but once they get to a certain height, if they're dense like this, they will actually kind of create their own mulch. So the water will actually stay a little bit longer, so you don't have to water nearly as deeply. And things like lettuce don't actually need, they don't need nearly as deep of water as things like squash or
Right.
even kale or what have you.
Yeah, learning about where the root system of your plants is getting its resources from.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. So that's really important. But for things like the squash, we do have to water. Sometimes we'll put on an extra, give them a little bit extra water just to isolate their like drip lines so that they get just the extra water, and we'll water for let that drip down for about an hour. So I think these are about 1/4 of a gallon an hour per emitter. Maybe it's a little bit less. But basically we'll do that, the really deep watering maybe once a week for the crops that really need it. Sometimes twice. And then everything else just gets water pretty regularly. So
I guess I have a couple of questions too. Did you guys buy kits in order to grow these?
Yeah, so to build them. Yeah, so we based this guy's Quonset tunnel, so that's the circle, style. We did not. We actually Johnny Selected Seeds is kind of our really good go-to resource. They have a lot of how-to guides for how to build these yourselves.
Nice.
So we actually bought a bender from them, which allows you to bend these hoops.
Yeah,
in the
cool.
shape.
Yeah, I got one of those too, and I guess I was curious because I know a lot of people will go the kit route, but it seems a lot more cost-effective, especially if you're building multiple high tunnels, to just go ahead and do the other.
Definitely.
Yeah. Did you get your pipe from Buffalo Fence or?
We actually just got it from Home Depot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
So we because I think we did just some cost calculations and things, and
that was the most effective way to do it.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
makes sense.
So, but really, you can source it from basically any hardware store, fencing company, or whatever. So,
Nice.
yeah, it's nice to be able to have accessibility there. So
Cool.
But
And
yeah.
sorry, how early in the summer, or I guess spring, do you go ahead and start planting in here, and how late do you harvest?
So we actually last year we were growing in here and through December.
Wow,
So this is a single wall. There's no double wall, so there's really very little insulating power. But during the day, it really is able to trap the heat because of the greenhouse effect. So yeah, the season extension is really a huge game changer for up here in Flag.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so last last winter we were growing through December. I think it was last winter, maybe it was the winter before, but through December it was like all cold weather greens, like
Right.
arugula, and what else do we have in here? We had arugula, I think we had some carrots, and then we had spinach,
Okay.
which is the queen of cold weather crops.
Right.
So yeah, and then in the spring we're able to start, a bunch of those really cold weather greens and crops in here around maybe like, March-ish. So yeah, it just takes quite a bit longer to germinate
Get 'em going.
because of the soil temperature issues. So.
And
but
you
yeah.
don't do any like supplemental heating or anything.
Nope.
You just go ahead 100%.
Yep,
Nice.
it's all
right.
yeah, no supplemental heating.
Nice.
Although that would probably be a good thing to have like a little wood stove in a little, one of these little spots.
Yeah.
But yeah, currently it's all, we keep it really simple. So
Nice.
So we have a couple of flower rows in here that Heather, who's one of the three, who's my partner and also one of the three kind of co-farmers with Refugia, is kind of the overseer of the flowers and the herbs and the perennials. We have some, a bunch of different varieties of blooms in here, and these 2 rows, and then this guy is cucumbers that are a little bit late, but we had some trouble with starts this season. But so we get some cucumbers in here, and then we have some turnips that we just recently put in,
Nice.
Tokyo white turnips, which are a really nice sweet variety. So so this guy's just for reference, this is a 12-foot wide by 48 feet long
Wow.
hoop house.
Nice.
So this was what we basically this was the first kind of big season extension project that we started with. And can't remember how. I'd say it cost us maybe about like $1,200 or $1,400.
Okay.
So it wasn't, I think for the, it's not ultra cheap, but for the amount of space that you get for something like this, and just the ease of working in a hoop house like this, these kind of hoop structures are the way to go.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So we've never had issues with snow load or anything. We are on the dry side of the mountain, but we have never had issues with snow load or anything like that with this guy. So
Nice.
So yeah.
Very cool. And so with the plastic that you use for this, is this just like a painter's plastic, or
So
is
this
it
is-
something specific for?
Yeah, so this is actually this is like a greenhouse plastic, so it is
Okay.
UV treated. I'm pretty sure it's either 5 or 6 mil, so that's
Okay.
the thickness of the plastic. We got it from Greenhouse Megastore, but you can also get it from like, Johnny's Selected Seeds or Farm Tech. There's a number. Just, the greenhouse plastic will last a lot longer than the the stuff that you get from Home Depot, because it is UV treated. It is treated to like withstand hail and things really well, and it will just last. We've had this since we built this back in 2018, and we've never had really any issues with it, like tearing or
Nice.
ripping or anything like that. So we know a guy actually across the way who has had his plastic on. They're rated for around 5 years, but who has had his plastic on for like 10 or 12, and it
Nice.
just recently started failing.
Okay,
So.
that's pretty impressive, because I know that our UV is pretty hard on plastics
Absolutely.
here, so that's a really good sign.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's better, we do a lot of things DIY here, but it's better to just invest in the things that you won't have to pay for again and
Yeah.
again and again down
Well,
the road.
and
So.
it's more environmentally friendly to buy something that's going to
Yes,
last rather than
absolutely.
like putting new plastic on every single season.
Absolutely,
So that's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we have this guy, and then we have our little. There's not much to look at right here, but we actually got. This was gifted to us by a family friend. Or a friend's family, some friends of ours who live on the other side of town. But it's a very DIY. It's actually pretty toasty in there. But this is what we call our crab shack, because we think it's looks something vaguely like something on the East Coast. But we disassembled this and moved it over here. Basically, it just allows us to have a little extra nursery space.
Nice.
It's a little bit insulated. You can see some of the panels that we actually need to replace. But they provide a little bit extra insulation for the winter time so that we can like move our cool weather crops from our nursery to out here to harden them off, and then before they actually come outside, whether be it in transplanting or what have you. So right now it's there's not much in there, but but yeah, it was a really it's a very simple theoretically really simple to build structure.
Nice.
So yeah. Yeah, about a month and a half, I'd say, for the compost to actually break down if we're really good about it, to be kind of usable so that we can sift it. Usually it's probably more like, a 3 or 4 month process.
Okay.
Just with, it goes by the wayside. It's
That's fair.
it's a long job.
Do what you can do when you can do it,
Exactly.
sort of deal. That's totally fair. Yeah.
So this has been kind of an ongoing project. So we do food waste from folks in town, as well as horse manure from local folks that we know, that we go with our truck and trailer to pick up. And many of these folks have pretty much all of them have little like John Deere tractors, so they'll load it for us,
That's
which really
nice.
is helpful.
Yeah.
And then we kind of integrate that. We also have someone who gives us a little bit of pig poop, and then just some of the chicken manure too, the chicken bedding material and things like that we integrate into the compost. So
Very cool. Very cool.
yeah. So
Do you feel like do you have to do supplemental compost from other sources just to have enough for? Yeah. Okay. That
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah. I feel
yeah,
like
and
it's a lot of compost.
exactly.
You probably go through.
Yeah,
And is
yeah.
that your main like additive to the soil, as you just go ahead and do compost, or do you use other things to fertilize?
Yeah, so mostly it's really a lot of it is just compost.
Okay.
And we do also, like this year, we were doing some corrective measures that we didn't really undertake as well in the past couple of years. So we were also adding feather meal, and then which is we were also adding feather meal and blood meal, both of which are byproducts. They're organic fertilizers. They're byproducts of industrial agriculture, which is kind of interesting. But feather meal is ground up feathers, and blood meal is actually dried and baked, essentially, blood from slaughterhouses. So they're byproducts of the industrial agriculture industry, but they're like really, really high in just nitrogen. We are very, very low in nitrogen in our soil here. So we have a lot of phosphorus and potassium here in our soil, but we just do not have a lot of nitrogen. So once we took our soil test, our initial soil test a couple of years ago, we were like, oh geez, we need organic matter and nitrogen.
Yeah.
So hence the compost, and then just trying to add, balance out the nitrogen to kind of create a baseline, and then hopefully we will be able to, not have to do any of those amendments, the blood meal and the feather meal, in future years, because we've kind of established a good baseline, and we're adding compost, and then we're also doing. We have some ambitions to do some compost teas, as well as some other kind of small fertilizers. So
Nice.
currently we also do, for some of our plants, we also do like a fish emulsion fertilizer. So that's like a liquid kind of backpack sprayer, fertilizer.
So you do like a foliar spray.
Yep,
Okay.
it's a
All
foliar
right.
spray.
Okay.
Yep. And so that helps a lot, especially for some of the starts for like getting them, if they've been in pots for a while.
Yeah.
As well as when we are transplanting, those guys definitely can use all the help they can get. So we have the fish emulsion fertilizer, and then we also have. We were gifted with a bunch of concentrated worm juice.
Oh, nice.
So this was a couple of years back. So that is a really rich, micronutrient-rich fertilizer that we do mostly as kind of like a spray at the base of the plants. Ideally, we would have a fertigation system, which is basically where you can inject like fertilizer concentrate from a bucket into your irrigation system, so your drip irrigation system, or a like a shower, like a hose sprayer.
I've seen that before. Okay.
Yeah, so that would be nice, because then it delivers it really, really efficiently straight to the plant roots. But we just haven't got to it yet.
Yeah.
Amid a myriad of projects.
Yes,
but,
that's totally fair.